The Switch 2 isn't even out yet, and there's already some drama around it, mainly surrounding its price. I'm of the opinion that it could be better and it can be worse. As it currently stands, the Switch 2 is selling for $450 for the base model and $500 in a bundle that includes Mario Kart and, of course, the Switch. Which, when that game costs $80, for the extra $50, you're saving $30, including the game. Most people end up buying a game with their new console. Depending on whether or not you would have spent $80 on that game in the first place, is neither here nor there. But buying it does actually save you some money if you do intend on eventually getting your hands on the new Mario Kart game. Pre-orders were set to happen, I believe, Wednesday this week, but that has been halted by Nintendo. Nintendo's no longer doing the pre-orders quite yet until tariff situation is either settled or they really determine whether or not they want to change the pricing, which basically means they're waiting to see whether or not they should increase the price of the already pretty darn expensive Switch 2. I've been talking with some of my friends and seeing the community's response to this, and a lot of what people are saying is the Switch 2, as it currently is, for $450 for the base model, just doesn't make a huge amount of sense. It makes a lot of sense if this is your only handheld. You don't buy anything like a Steam Deck, Legion Go, anything like that. This is your only portable gaming device, and yeah, it makes a lot of sense in that respect. But for people who play on multiple different platforms, people who play and own things like Steam Decks, Legion Goes, it's a little bit harder to justify. And if you don't already have something like this already, and you're looking at the greater handheld gaming market, you also might not be entirely sold on the idea of a Switch 2, purely on the basis of there are so many options out there if you find yourself interested in a mobile gaming device. For example, a big point of comparison is the Steam Deck. It's the closest PC counterpart to something like the Switch that the greater community has access to. If you are lucky and get it when it is in stock, you can get a refurbished 64GB Steam Deck for $280. That is almost 50% cheaper than the Switch 2's base model, and almost, again, 50%-ish than the $500 bundled option. And if you already own a whack ton of PC games, they're all going to be playable for the most part on the Steam Deck. I can be playing Elden Ring on my PC at home and then grab my Steam Deck and take it with me and keep playing Elden Ring on the go with the same save in everything. You could do all of that for $280 if you can get it asterisks at all. But if you just go with the current base model Steam Deck for $400, that's still $50 and $100 cheaper respectively. So even if you don't go through the hacky cheaty route to save the most money you possibly can with going refurbished, you're still saving $50 and $100 respectively. So a lot of people aren't seeing the value, especially if you're a first-time buyer. There isn't a whole lot really pushing you in the direction of the Switch 2. And this leads people to call for a cheaper version or seeing the price decreased. I personally sit somewhere in the middle. I really don't want to spend $450 on a Switch 2, but I know I will eventually either have to, of course, because I make videos about this kind of stuff, or I will wait until something like a Switch 2 Lite or a new revision comes out and I can pick up the old one for cheaper. Potentially even wait for open box deals. Because as it currently stands, $450 for the base model, to me at least, is a little hard to justify. Especially when I have something like the Steam Deck and other handhelds I could play on that really achieves what I really am looking for. Another example is the Asus RG Ally. You can currently get one of those for $422 open box from Best Buy, at least in my local area. And that's a killer deal. I'm not saying it will be the same experience. By all means, the Switch 2 will have greater optimization and should perform a lot better than something like these other handhelds. But given time, even like later this year, and currently depending on how much you really want to spend, you can get the same or better performance realistically. And with Asus and Microsoft potentially making their own handheld themselves around this price point, I see more calls to actually wait and see rather than jump the gun, pre-order the Switch 2, and potentially suffer some buyer's remorse. I have a massive Switch library, and I have a massive Steam library, and it makes a lot of sense for me to own both. But as it currently stands, I don't really see a lot of reason to upgrade from my current Switch. And if I want to play AAA titles, I have things like the Tecno Pocket Go, the Steam Deck, ROG Allies. It's just so many options for high-end portable gaming. And with the potential to see price increases because of the tariffs on Nintendo's devices, it just makes it even harder to justify the potential pre-order. Nintendo claims that there should be no scalping issues, there should be stock available, so I'm gonna put my faith in an idea. I'm not gonna get a pre-order and just hope that prices will eventually come down and maybe pick one up on the second hand or open box. Even if it is a nominal price increase of $25 to $50, that means the base model would have become somewhere between $475 to $500. That puts it in competition with devices that aren't necessarily comparable, but it pushes it in the same category as the Xbox Series X, as the Xbox Series S and PS5. It just makes it way harder to justify the compromises a Nintendo Switch 2 experience would have in comparison to something like that. And the justification that, oh, it's portable, I feel like carries less weight once you're spending full console prices, because there are so many other options that are significantly cheaper that you could spend your money on instead and achieve a very similar, if not the better experience. Nintendo Switch, at least in the past, was considered to be the perfect companion to anybody who already owned something like an Xbox and a PS4. I remember Sony press actually saying that we are not concerned about the Switch because, according to their own market research, about like 95% or some else ridiculously high, that pretty much everybody who owned a PS4 also owned a Switch, the Switch being a perfect companion piece. And when your companion piece is the same price as your main system, it feels bad, and it's a little bit harder to justify that purchase. And if there isn't a huge amount of games that really warrant you potentially considering this in the first place, like for me, none of the launch titles really caught my eye. Elden Ring did look really good if that was in fact in-engine footage, but we don't really know for certain how well that game is going to run. And I'm pretty happy with how it runs on my Steam Deck and devices like the Tecno Pocket Go. And I have that experience now, and I don't have to wait for the Switch 2 to enjoy that. And for people who have Xboxes and PlayStations, I still don't see them necessarily considering the Switch 2 either, unless they seriously want some of the launch titles. I believe, honestly, we're in a much better position to sit and wait, or even consider alternative options like the Legion Go, like the Ally and the Steam Deck, alongside some newer handhelds that are coming out later down the line. I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Do you believe the Switch 2 is too expensive? Are you going to sit and wait, or are you ready to pre-order once it comes out? I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.